Hi. Today we're going to be talking about solving multi-step equations, algebraic equations. I'm going to be working from the packet called Advanced Equations from the Number Power book. My name is Ann Scannello, and I'm a tutor for the Seeds of Literacy. And there we go. The packet that we're working from looks kind of like this. And I'm just going to be covering some of the problems from pages 72 to 91. We're going to be working on skills like combining like terms, how to solve multi-step equations that involve parentheses. I'm going to solve several word problems, and we're going to be solving for missing side lengths. I want to start with a quick review of something we went over in the last video on how to solve basic algebraic equations. In an algebraic equation, the balance beam is being used to represent the equal sign. Whatever we have on the left side of the balance beam has to have the exact same weight or value as everything on the right side. We want to simplify this one because our problem here, x plus 3 equals 5. We've got x and 3 ones. Over here, we have 5 ones. In order to simplify or solve, we're going to remove as much as we can from both sides, but we have to remove the same amount from both sides. So I can take 3 away from the left and also 3 away from the right. Leaves me with this picture down here. So I removed the exact same amount from both sides. Because I did that, my balance beam is still level and the two sides are still equal, leaving me with x equals 2. Okay, so now we're going to solve some problems on my whiteboard. And there we go. Hopefully you can see my whiteboard okay. We're going to start with it's really a pretty basic problem, but it's got a lot of negative numbers in it, and so that can make it more challenging. Okay, so that problem says negative 3a minus 4 equals 17. Before we start a problem, I always like to ask myself, when I'm finished, which side do I want my a's on and which side do I want my numbers on? In this problem, because I only have a's on the left side, I'm going to leave them on the left. And that means I'm going to try to get all of my numbers on the right side. And remember, when I'm finished with this problem, I'm going to be left with a equals a value, or a equals a number. So I'm going to start negative 3a. Well, that's on the side where I want my a's. So minus 4, that's a number that needs to move. The opposite of minus 4 would be plus 4. I can do anything I want so long as I do the exact same action to both sides. So I need to add plus 4 to both sides. Minus 4 plus 4, that's going to cancel. I still have my negative 3a on the left equal 7 plus 4 is 11. Negative 3a equals 21. I always want to undo all of my addition and subtraction first. Now that I've undone all of that, I have to deal with negative 3 times by a. To undo multiplication, I do the opposite, which is divide. So I'm going to divide both sides of my equation by a negative 3, making sure I do the same action. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is just going to be a positive 1. Don't forget your a. I still have that. Bring down my equal sign. Make that look like an a, not an I. 21 divided by negative 3 is going to be negative 7. And remember, 1a is the same thing as just saying a equals negative 7. Okay, let's try another problem. This is another pretty basic, simple problem, but it's got fractions in it. So I just wanted to show one that had that. So 3, this is from the packet, I'm sorry. We're on page 75. It's problem number 5. If you happen to have the packet, you could certainly follow along. If you don't, I would suggest keep track on a piece of paper. And then when you get back to seeds and you get the packet, work through the packet independently. If you have problems, go back and watch the video again. Watch how a certain problem might be solved to kind of remind you of some of the strategies. Okay, so this is our problem. 3/4 n plus 3 equals 9. So again, when I'm all finished, I want to have n on one side of the equal sign and all of my numbers on the right side. N's are on the left, so I'm going to leave them there. Undo plus 3 by saying minus 3. Do that from both sides. Still have my 3/4 n. That's going to cancel. Bring down my equal sign. 9 minus 3 is going to equal 6. Okay, so now I have to undo the multiplication of 3/4 times by n. And I do that by dividing by 3/4. Do it on one side of the equation. I have to do it on the other side of the equation. Divided by 3/4. Okay, remember we talked in the last video, when we're dividing by another fraction, it's really easier to write it next to it. So I wrote it out here underneath, but now I'm going to rewrite. And remember also that when we divide by a fraction, it's actually the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal, also known as the flip-flop. So if I'm going to multiply by 4/3 on the left, I need to do the same thing on the right, because that is the same thing as dividing by 3/4. And here I know when I'm multiplying fractions, I need both of them to be fractions. So my whole number needs to go over the number 1. Okay, let's go back and simplify now. 4/3 times by 3/4, that's just going to equal 1n equals 6 times by 4 equals 24 over 1 times by 3 equals 3. 24 divided by 3 equals 8. So 1n equals 8. Of course, we don't have to write that 1. You almost never see that in algebra. We know that's the same thing as n equals 8. Now we're going to move on to something called combining like terms. And the problems in this particular packet are pretty simple. I'm going to start with one of theirs. I'm on page 76 of the packet. This is number 1. Their problem is 3y plus 5y equals 32. Whoops. Equals 32. And so this literally is like the letter y 3 times, and 5y is like the letter y 5 times. And so if I've got 3 y's plus another 5 y's, I have a total of 8 y's, and that's going to equal 32. Undo my multiplication by dividing. Leaves me with y equals 4. That is as difficult as they get in this packet. I wanted to do a couple of problems on my own just to kind of give you an idea of kind of the basic rules for combining like terms. This is going to come back up, and you're going to see a lot of this in algebra. First problem I made up was x minus 16 plus x squared minus 12x. You might see something like that, and it might say simplify. So the first thing you need to do is you need to find terms that can go together. And we see here, just like in the last problem, we've got x, which we know is the same thing as 1x, and minus 12x. Well, those are both x terms, so we can combine those. 1 minus 12 would be negative 11, and remember, we still have our x. So I've combined 1x and minus 12x. So those two are done. They combine to be negative 11x. I only have one number, and numbers don't combine with x terms. I always have to leave that separate. And I have an x squared term in this one. X squareds don't combine with x's. They are their own entity. They're their own world. So I'm just going to add that on and say plus x squared. The weird thing about this problem, this is the answer. That is the simplified version of this. You can only combine certain terms together, and you don't ever want to make the mistake of combining unlike terms. So there is one more thing I can do. Mathematicians like to be very orderly, and so they write their expressions in a certain order. They like to start with their largest exponents. So probably you would see this answer written, x squared, I've got that one written, and then minus 11x, because that's like an exponent of 1. So I wrote that one, and then minus 16. That's it. That is the simplified version of our original problem. We're going to try one more of those. This one's a little bit hairier. 7x plus x squared plus 2x squared minus 4x plus 17 minus x cubed plus 8. Hopefully you can see that written. That is a really long expression. And if I'm told to simplify it by combining like terms, I'm going to have to find things that go together. Because I know mathematicians like to write things, expressions with the largest exponents going first, this time I'm going to start with this minus x to the third power. Even though that is intended to be subtraction, remember that sticks with the x. It's the same thing as like plus a negative. So I'm just going to rewrite that because I only have one x cubed term, or x to the third power. So that is like negative x to the third power. Now x squareds, I have two terms like that. Remember, x squared is like 1x squared. So 1x squared plus 2x squared, that's like 3x squared. I always put check marks so I remember what have I done, what have I not done. And now I've got 7x and minus 4x, they can go together. That's going to leave me with 3x. Now I have 17 and 8, and they go together, and that's going to be 25. Okay, so that's it. Someone gives me that expression and says simplify. This is the simplified version written in the appropriate format. Okay, so let's get back to solving some problems where we're going to have to combine our like terms. Back in the packet, I am on page 79. I'm going to start with problem 3. And that problem is 9b minus 7 equals 5b plus 25. This is a really good time to talk again about making my plan. There are several road paths or several different ways we could solve this problem correctly, but I personally would prefer not to work with negative numbers. So when I'm deciding, do I want my b on the left side of the equal sign or the right side of the equal sign, I look at both of my b terms, and I have more b's on the left side, so I prefer to leave them there. It helps me to avoid negative numbers. Bring up my equal sign. That means that all of my numbers are going to go to the right. My ultimate goal is to have b equals some value. Okay, so now let's solve the problem. And this is what I say in my head. Let me see, I want my b's on my left side of the equal sign. Well, I've got 9 b's, that's where I want it. Minus 7, that's a number. I need to move that to the right side. So I need to cancel it out or undo it. The opposite of minus 7 is going to be plus 7. I have to make sure I do the exact same operations to both sides of the equal sign. I still have my 9b. Minus 7 plus 7, well, that's just going to cancel. I could write a +0 there. I'm not going to do that. It just causes me to do more work. I still have my 5b on the right side. And notice here, when I had to write +7, a lot of students will write +7 under 5b. I don't do that. I know that the 7 is going to combine with other numbers in the problem. I'm going to line it up where it belongs to combine with like terms. And my 5b is just going to stay 5b. Okay, 25 plus 7 is going to equal 32. Okay, so now I'll go back to my plan here. I wanted all my b's on the left, and all on the left side of the equal sign, I only have b's. On the right side, I want all of my numbers. So I say, what's in the wrong place? Well, I've got this 5b term. That's not a number. I need to undo or move 5b. Do it to the right side. I also have to do it to the left side. 9b minus 5b is going to equal 4b. Bring down my equal sign. I like to keep my equal signs as straight as possible. 5b minus 5b, that's just going to cancel. But I still have my 32. I undo all of my addition and subtraction first. Now that I've gotten rid of all of that, I can deal with my multiplication. The opposite of 4 times by b would be divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. I still have my b. Equals 32 divided by 4 is 8. B equals 8. You can see that got a little more challenging. One more similar to that. It's going to be 5y plus 9 equals negative 2y plus 30. When I'm making my plan and saying to myself, which side do I want my y on? Which side do I want my numbers on? I would look at these two y terms and I would say, you know what? I want to keep my y's on the left side of the equal sign because I have more of them and it's going to help me avoid negative operations using negatives. But I could still do it the other way. And there are going to be times when you're solving problems and you're going to realize you are not doing the optimal plan, but that's okay. Because so long as you continue doing legal math steps, you're still going to get the correct answer. So I'm going to go against my best judgment, and I'm going to say, when I'm finished with this problem, I want y on the right side of the equal sign, and I want all my numbers on the left. Let's go ahead and solve it that way. Just see what happens. Okay, so I want my numbers on the left, and right now I have this 5y here. I need to move that because I want all my y's on the right side. So to undo it, minus 5y. I'm going to line up minus 5y underneath my negative 2y. Make sure I line it up with my like terms. That's going to cancel. Left with my 9. Negative 2y minus 5y is going to be negative 7y. Still have my plus 30. Don't forget about that. Okay, so now on the left side, I have only numbers. That's what I wanted. On the right side, negative 7y. That's where I wanted it, but plus 30. That needs to move because I decided to put all my numbers on the left side this time. Minus 30 from both sides. Line up my equal sign. 9 minus 30 is going to equal negative 21. Plus 30 minus 30 goes away. Negative 7y. Now I need to undo this multiplication because remember, I really want y all by itself. So now I'm going to divide both sides of the equal sign by a negative 7. Negative 21 divided by negative 7. Remember, dividing like signs or dividing a negative by a negative is going to be a positive answer. So it's going to be positive 3. And that's going to cancel. So even though I I chose to put my Y's on the right this time, even though most of them began on the left side. I still was able to get the correct answer. I just had to deal with all these negatives in here. Now I want to look at a couple of word problems. And to show you these, I'm hoping you'll be able to see them. I wanted to show you the formatting that they gave you. So this one says, as an appliance salesperson, you earn $1,850 each month in salary. You also receive an additional $25 for each appliance you sell. If last month you earned a total of $2,375, how many appliances A did you sell? And we're going to use the letter A to represent appliances. By the way, if you do have the packet, this problem is on page 80. It is problem number 4. It's designed to be a multiple choice problem. I cannot emphasize enough, our brains, when we're looking at options that are so similar down here, it is going to be very easy to get confused. I always encourage students, ignore the answers. Write your own equation based on the problem. So that's what we're going to try to do. I'm going to read this again. Let me see. We know that A is going to represent the number of appliances that we sold. And it says, as an appliance salesperson, I earn $1,850 each month in salary. So I know that I get $1,850 in salary. Good for me. I also receive an additional, hint, hint, we're going to add an additional $25 for each appliance that I sell. Now, each tells you that's going to be a repeated operation. It's something that's going to happen each time I do something, I get $25. So hint, hint, that is going to be multiplication. And so in this case, I get $25 for each appliance that I sell. So 25 times by the appliances that I sell. Last month, using this formula, I earned $2,375. So that is our correct equation. Okay, now let's compare that to the options that they gave us. Let me see if I can fold this. And you can see, of course, there we go. Of course, they gave them to us kind of in a different arrangement than what we came up with. But if you will look at option C, they're adding, you get $25 per appliance plus your base salary of $1,850 equals the total salary for last month. So the correct answer would be option C. Okay, but now they want us to solve this for how many appliances we sold. So I would want my A's on the left, my numbers on the right, and I've got my equal sign. I'm going to subtract the numbers to move them from the left to the right side. That's going to cancel out. I still have my 25A. Bring down my equal sign. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. 3 minus 8, I can't do that, so I need to borrow. 13 minus 8 is 525. So now I've got 25 times by A. I need to divide by 25. Do that to the left. I'm going to do it to the right. Here's a little aside. A lot of times in math tests and math problems, they like to use the numbers 5, 10, 25, 50, and 100. And I think the reason they do that is because it kind of corresponds to our money, and a lot of people can use mental math just because we're so familiar with working with money. We know this is going to be A on the left side. Think in your head, $5.25 divided by quarters. It's kind of like saying, how many quarters would we have in $5.25? That's one way you could solve it. Or you could still use traditional long division. 25 into 52 goes 2 times. I'm going to subtract that. Bring down my 5. 25 into 5 goes 1 time. I have 0 remainder. Apparently, we sold 21 appliances last month. Another word problem. This one says, make sure you can read it. Okay. This one says, suppose you pay a 6% state sales tax. You decide to buy a new bed for a total cost of $630.70, and that includes the tax. What is the price P of the bed before the tax? So they're telling us we're going to use P to represent the selling price of the bed. But we also are going to have to pay a 6% tax on that price. So hopefully you know, quick review, 6%, if you will write that in decimal form, it will be much simpler to solve your problem. And 6% is the same thing as 0.06. So in order to figure out, let me see, so P, that's how much a bed costs is P. But in order to figure out a 6% tax, I'm going to pay 6% of the price of the bed. And in the last video, I think I told you that of implies that we're going to multiply. So 6% of the price of the bed is going to be the same thing as 0.06 times by P. So this is how we're going to calculate the tax on our bed. But remember, that's not all we're going to pay, because we still have to pay for the bed. And remember, P is the same thing as 1P. We're going to get one bed. If I was getting 5 beds, I could put 5 there. Bring down my equal sign. Oh, sorry. Not bring down my equal sign. That was something different. Our total price, the tax plus the price of the bed, is going to equal $630.70. Okay, remember how we talked about combining like terms? These are both P terms, so there's nothing stopping us from adding those together first. It's going to make the problem a little bit simpler, a little bit faster. So 1P plus 0.06P is going to be the same thing as 1.06P equals $630.70. Need to divide both sides by 1.06. Leaves me with the price of one bed is going to be, and on this kind of a problem, you certainly could use, well, we'll go ahead. No, we won't. You certainly could use long division, but I have a feeling you would probably be allowed to use a calculator. So I solved it on a calculator and came up with $595. When you've got a problem like this, there were a lot of steps. It can be confusing. Make sure your answer makes sense. So we know that we bought one bed and that we paid a 6% tax. And after we did that, our final bill was $630.70. Does that make sense? $595, could that be the price of the bed? And then it looks like we're paying, about $34, $35 in tax for our total of $630.70. Absolutely. Good answer. Our next problem looks weird, and that's why I wanted to share it today. They're showing you illustrations of complex multi-step algebra equations. So this one, they're showing you 2 lengths of a line. And you can see the two lengths. So we've got this length and we've got the length above it. Sorry, length above it. And they're the same length. So I'm going to use the equal sign to show that the two lines are the same length. On the top line here, I've got 4 sections that are all y long. I'm going to represent that by saying 4 times by y. I've repeated y 4 times, that length. The other line is 2y plus 24, and they're the same length. Now all I have to do is solve. Now this is another example of when I would come up with my plan and I would say, look, I've got y's on both sides. Most of my y's are on the left, so I want to leave all of my y's on the left. Too many times students don't think about making the plan first and they just start going. And so I'm going to show you, if you decide or just wind up putting your y's on the right, you can still get the correct answer. So long as you're making legal math moves, you can still get the exact same answer. It just, you wind up maybe doing an extra step or two. So what I'll see is I'll get students do this. They'll say, okay, so I know I need to, I've got two y terms. I need to put those together. So let me combine those two y terms, 4y minus 4y. That just cancels out. 2y minus 4y is going to be negative 2y. Still have my plus 24. And they're looking at something like this. And at this point, many students start to panic. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen students do this. They erase that plus sign and they put the equal sign in there. You absolutely, positively cannot do that. But you can still save this problem. Ordinarily, I don't like to write the 0 here because 4y minus 4y cancels out. It's nothing. I don't want to do extra steps. In this case, I don't have anything else on the left side of the equal sign. I need a placeholder. I have to put the 0 there so that I can finish this problem. It's holding my place. Okay, so now let me see. I've got all my y's right there. I need to get my numbers to the left side. So plus 24, the opposite is minus 24. Did the same thing on both sides. That's going to cancel. Still have my negative 2y. 0 minus 24 is going to be a negative 24. Now I need to undo that multiplication. So I'm going to divide. I multiplied by negative 2, so now I have to divide by negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2, that's just a positive 1. I'm just left with y there. Negative 24 divided by negative 2. Remember, dividing two negatives equals a positive 12. So even though I didn't solve this problem using the optimal method, I still got my correct answer. Just had to deal with an extra step there, had to remember to put my 0 in, had some negatives, but it works. Okay, the next problem that we're going to solve, again, looks weird. But it really is not a difficult problem. They're showing you this triangle. And they're reminding you, and I cut it off here in the directions. They said, remember, perimeter is the distance around the triangle. Like if we were to add up all 3 side lengths of the triangle, that's going to be your perimeter. So that was kind of the hint they gave you right there. So now it's really not that tough. We've got our 3 side lengths. We need to add up those 3 side lengths, and they're telling us the perimeter should equal 90. Okay, well, let's write that out. X plus 2x plus 10 plus 3x minus 16. Sometimes I like to put parentheses, not because I need the parentheses, but because it helps us to see. That was our first side length, that was the base of the triangle, and that was our third side length. But really, because we're just adding everything together, those aren't required, but helpful for simplification, and that was a plus sign. Okay, so I'm going to write some so we can go ahead and solve. So I know I can combine all of my x terms. So I've got an x, a 2x, and a 3x. So 1x plus 2x is 3x, plus 3 more x is going to be 6x. I've got a couple of numbers here, plus 10 minus 16, going to combine to be a minus 6. And when I add all of that up, they told me my perimeter was going to be 90. So I'm going to bring that down. It's going to be 90. So here, I know I want my x's on the left because I only have one x. So I don't, why move it? Why do extra work? So I need to move this number. Opposite of minus 6 is plus 6. That cancels. 6x equals 96. Need to divide both sides by 6. Some of you might have that memorized, but you know, not everyone has got 96 divided by 6 memorized. So let's work it out. 6 goes into 9 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Got to subtract 3. I'm going to bring down my 6. 6 divides into 36 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. I have 0 remainder. So x is going to equal 16. And oh, we have one more skill I want to talk about, and this is actually going to be our second to last problem. 2 more skills we're going to talk about. Sometimes we have parentheses within the problem. That's an A. Right now I'm on page 83. I'm solving problem number 4. A plus 1. Okay. So now in order to solve this problem, I have to deal with these parentheses. Remember, a number in front of a set of parentheses, we should understand that we need to multiply everything in the parentheses by that number, but everything in the parentheses, not just the first term. So I like to draw arrows to remind myself I need to do the multiplication of both of those. 7 times by A is 7A. 7 times by -1, remember that subtraction sign sticks with the 1. 7 times by -1 is going to be like -7 or -7. Same thing over here. I have to multiply the 6 times by everything in parentheses. 6 times A is going to be 6A. 6 times by +1 is going to be +6. Now I need to solve. I know I've got more A's on the left, so I'm going to leave my A's on the left. That means that all of my numbers I'm going to put on the right. So 7A, that's right where I want it. -7. I need to get that to cancel. I need to undo that. I'm going to line up my like terms. That's going to cancel. Left with 7A equals, still have my 6A. 6 plus 7 equals 13. Now all my A's are on the left. On my right, I only want numbers. 6A is not where I want it. The opposite is going to be -6A. Do the same thing on both sides. 7A minus 6A is just going to equal A. Cancels, equals 13. I have one more problem I want to solve. And that is a word problem. And unfortunately, I don't have a good way to show you the word problem. And this is not great, but I'm going to read it out loud. It says, simple interest paid on a loan is given by the formula I equals PRT, where P equals principal, which that means the amount that you borrowed, R equals loan rate, and that's a yearly rate, and T equals time. That's how many years you're going to have the loan. So the formula is, and this is just a formula you memorize. This isn't anything we figured out. This is just a formula that you know to figure out interest. And the interest that you're going to pay is going to be the principal, the amount that you borrowed, multiplied by the yearly rate, multiplied by the amount of time. Okay, so if, let's say, they're telling me how much interest I have to pay, and they're telling me the rate and the amount of time. And maybe my question is, what was the principal? How much money did I borrow to end up paying that amount of interest at that rate for that amount of time? So it helps me to be able to use my concepts on this formula. So if I want P all by itself, right now, P is being multiplied. I'm going to use parentheses. It's being multiplied by both rate and time. I can undo that multiplication by dividing by rate times by time. I do that on one side of the equation, got to do it on both sides. Now we rewrite. Rate times time on top cancels with rate times time on the bottom. I'm left with only P, and the formula to get my principal would be interest divided by the product of rate times by time. Okay. We have covered a lot of work with equations. Get as far as you can in the packet on your own, but if you have questions, go back and watch the video again. See if you can, look at the answers, see what you can do to help be successful on the rest of the packet. Any questions?